My grandma stared at me and said, "Honey, why are you in that old suit? Didn't we get you a custom tux for graduation?" My dad just grinned and said, "I got rid of it. It wouldn't have suited him anyway." She went quiet. And what she did after that left the whole room frozen. I still remember the exact smell of that cheap cologne my dad always wore. Too sharp, too strong, like he was trying to cover up something awful. Maybe he was, because that day, with my entire future on the line, that smell became the scent of betrayal. I was standing by the window in the school auditorium, my suit cuffs barely brushing my wrists, the shoulders too tight. It wasn't the midnight blue, custom-tailored tux Eleanor, my grandmother, had insisted on. This one was thrift store brown, wrinkled, loose in all the wrong places. I could already feel the whispers behind me, the judgment creeping in. I swallowed hard, trying to hold it together. I'm Caleb, 18, 2 weeks out of high school, and this is the story of how my dad, Robert, tried to shatter one of the biggest moments of my life, and how he utterly underestimated the wrong person. I'd always been the quiet one, head down, decent grades, never a scene. But there's a limit. That day was my tipping point, the day Eleanor finally saw everything for what it really was. And once she did, nothing would ever be the same. Robert, my dad, he's complicated. Or that's what people say when they don't want to admit someone's just mean. When I was little, I remember him ruffling my hair, calling me champ. He'd toss a baseball with me, pretend to let me win at video games. But things shifted. Maybe after my mom left. I was 9 when she packed her bags. A quick hug, a kiss, then gone. I only caught fragments of conversations back then, control, broken trust. I pieced it together later. After she left, Robert started drinking. Not falling down drunk, but quiet, heavy drinking. 2 beers and by the time I got home, old war documentaries blaring. He stopped coming to my school events, stopped asking about my day. He started being critical. My hair was too long, my clothes were weird, my voice too soft. "Man up, Caleb," he'd sneer. "You're not a kid anymore." The only one who truly had my back was Eleanor, his mom. She's the kind of woman who wears bold lipstick, swears by homegrown tomatoes, and doesn't take nonsense from anyone, especially her own son. She lived 2 hours away but called every weekend. She drove up for my band concerts even when no one else did. She remembered my favorite foods, my favorite books. When I told her I wanted to go to art school, she didn't blink. "Then we'll make it happen," she said. Eleanor insisted on the tux. She'd saved for months, and I knew it wasn't easy for her, living on a modest pension. "Every boy deserves to feel like James Bond on his big day," she declared. We went together to the boutique. I'd never had anything custom-fitted before. When I stepped out, her eyes lit up. "That's my handsome boy," she clapped. I almost cried right there. A week before graduation, she called, excited to see me in it. But the morning of graduation, the tux was gone. Not in my room, not in the laundry, not in the car. Nowhere. I asked Robert casually, "Hey, seen my tux?" He didn't look up. Probably left it somewhere. When I pressed, he shrugged. "Why do you need a tux?" "It's just high school." My chest tightened. "Eleanor bought that for me," I said. "She's driving all this way to see me in it." That's when he finally looked up, a smirk playing on his lips. "It's just a suit, Caleb. Don't be so dramatic." I didn't understand. Not then. I wanted to believe he'd just misplaced it, or taken it to the cleaners. But then, just before we left, I saw the receipt on the kitchen counter. Folded, like he meant to toss it. I opened it. $125. Men's formal wear consignment. Blue tux, lightly worn. My stomach dropped. The world tilted. I folded it back up, tucked it in my pocket. He just whistled along with the radio, like it was any other day. At the school, I felt like I was floating, disconnected. Posing for pictures, shaking hands, all while tugging at the sleeves of that ugly brown suit, praying Eleanor wouldn't notice. She arrived just before the ceremony, a blue floral dress, a wide-brimmed hat, the same one from my 8th grade promotion. She spotted me, her face lighting up, then shifting. She hugged me tight, then pulled back, frowning slightly. "Sweetheart, why are you wearing that old suit?" she asked gently. "Didn't we buy you a custom tux?" Before I could speak, Robert stepped in. "I sold it," he said, like commenting on the weather. Wouldn't have looked good on him anyway. Eleanor's body stiffened beside me. She looked at him, truly looked, and I swear I saw something break in her eyes. She didn't speak right away, just stared at him like he was a stranger. Then, slowly, she turned back to me, her expression softening. She brushed a piece of lint off my lapel. "Well," she said quietly. "That's all right, Caleb. You still look like a young man worth celebrating." But the air was ice. The ceremony was a blur. I heard my name, walked across the stage, shook hands. My mind was stuck on that moment, on her face, on his smug tone, on the tux that should have been mine. After, we went back to the house for a small get-together. Robert invited a few loud friends. Eleanor came, bringing her lemon bars, then asked to talk outside. We sat on the back porch as the sun dipped, casting everything in gold. She handed me a lemon bar. "Caleb," she said slowly. "Did he really sell it?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She nodded, like she already knew, just wanted to hear it. "I thought so," she said, looking out at the yard, her fingers tightening on her purse. "There's a lot I've let slide with him over the years. Too much. But not this. Not when it comes to you." And that's when everything started to change. I didn't know how far she'd go, or what she was about to set in motion. But Robert had crossed a line. And Eleanor? She wasn't the type to let it go. Eleanor stayed after the party, while I cleaned up. I heard muffled voices from the living room. Hers, low and calm. His, sharper, rising and falling. Like waves hitting rocks. I caught fragments: disrespect, unacceptable, not who I raised. Then his response: "Stay out of it, Mom. He's my kid." That hit harder than expected. My kid. Not Caleb. Not your grandson. Just a possession, a thing to toss around like the tux he sold for pocket change. When she finally left, her hug lasted a second longer than usual, and she whispered, "I'll fix this. I promise." I wanted to believe her, but part of me was already shutting down, boxing it all up so it wouldn't hurt. But that box didn't stay shut for long. The days after graduation should have been quiet, a satisfying break. Instead, Robert started acting smug. Not in his usual way, but with a new edge, like he'd won some game I didn't know the rules to. He made offhand remarks about kids these days and entitled brats. He even joked to a friend loudly that he was doing the boy a favor, teaching him life doesn't hand you things on a silver platter. Which was ironic, because Robert had always had that silver platter. Eleanor had bailed him out of debt, helped him buy the house, paid the down payment, bought furniture, loaned him money for truck repairs when he refused a second job. And still, he acted like the world owed him everything. Meanwhile, I was working part-time at a bookstore, saving for college supplies. Biking there even in the rain, no car. Eleanor offered tuition help, but I wanted to earn what I could. I didn't want to be another mark in her life, someone who took without thinking twice. Then came the thick envelope, the university seal of my dream art school in Northwood. I opened it alone on the back steps, sun on my neck, heart in my throat. Accepted. Full ride. Merit scholarship, room and board included. I don't cry easily, but I came close. All I could think about was showing Eleanor, watching her eyes light up like they had in the tuck shop. I didn't show Robert right away. I knew what he'd say, art degrees are useless. I was lucky they hadn't seen my face. But he found it the next morning. I came downstairs to find him at the table, the letter unfolded, his coffee mug beside it. A strange look on his face. Not proud, almost offended. He looked up. So, this is what you've been hiding? Hiding? I just got it yesterday. He grunted, folded the paper neatly. Scholarship or not? Don't think this means you're too good for real work. Drawing pretty pictures won't pay the bills. I didn't answer. No point. That box in my chest cracked a little more. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Subtle at first. Forgetting my dinner if I got home late. Accidentally moving my laundry to wash his own. My sketchbooks disappeared, only to turn up smudged or water damaged in the garage. He never mentioned the text, never apologized, never explained. Like he thought if he ignored it, I'd forget. But I didn't. Then came the day everything changed. A hot, muggy Saturday in early July. I was off work, so I decided to visit Eleanor. We'd been texting, she said she had a little surprise. Her house smelled like cinnamon rolls and fresh-cut roses. She handed me lemonade and led me to the sunroom. On the coffee table sat a box. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it," she smiled, a little too tightly. Inside was a suit. Not just a suit. The tux. Midnight blue, initials in the lining. Pristine. My jaw dropped. But, she explained, the consignment shop had a good return policy. She'd had a hunch. After the graduation party, she called every men's formal wear shop in the county until she found the one with a recent sale matching the text description and the name Robert Reynolds on the receipt. She drove there the next day, paid full price to buy it back, and never told him. "I wanted you to have it," she said simply. "He didn't get to decide you weren't worth it." I hugged her so tight I thought I'd break her ribs. Then she said, "I need to tell you something," sitting down, her hands folded. "I've been thinking about what he said at the ceremony, about selling it, about how he treated you." I sat beside her, sensing the shift in her tone. "I've tried for years to believe Robert would grow out of it, that he was just lost after your mother left. But Caleb, he's not lost. He's rotten. And I think it's time I stopped pretending otherwise." She pulled an envelope from her purse. Inside was a copy of her will. My name was on it. Robert's wasn't. "Caleb, when I pass, everything goes to you. The house, the savings, the stocks. I've been planning this for a while." Graduation sealed it. I couldn't speak. My hands shook. "I didn't want to tell you until you were older, but I don't trust him not to find out. If he does, I need you to know it wasn't an accident." The ground shifted under my feet. "I know you're strong," she said, placing a hand over mine. "But be careful. He won't take it well." She was right. I didn't tell him, of course. But Eleanor was right. He found out. 2 weeks later, I came home to find the front door wide open. The energy was wrong. Quiet. Too quiet. My backpack was on the kitchen floor, ripped open, laptop missing, sketchbooks tossed, some torn. I turned into the living room and stopped. There he was, Robert, holding the copy of the will, his hands shaking, his face unreadable. "You think you're smarter than me?" he said, voice low. "You and your grandmother plotting behind my back." I opened my mouth, but he cut me off. "She's leaving everything to you. You think you earned that? You think you deserve what I built?" I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. "You didn't build any of it, Dad. She bailed you out your whole life." His eyes went wild. For a moment, I thought he'd hit me. Then he threw the will into the fireplace and lit a match. I lunged, but the flames caught fast. Too fast. By the time I grabbed the poker, the edges were already curling black. I stood there, watching it burn, heart pounding, throat tight. I realized something. This wasn't just about the suit. This was about control. About him knowing he couldn't bully Eleanor anymore. Couldn't make me feel small. Couldn't erase me from the picture like he'd erased my mom from every photo in the house. He wanted to be the only name that mattered. And when he couldn't be, he decided to burn the whole thing down. But what he didn't know was that the copy he burned wasn't the only one. And what he really didn't know, Eleanor had been planning something much, much bigger. And I was finally ready to stop playing nice. When the flames died, only a few blackened corners of paper remained. Robert stood there, chest heaving, his expression flickering between triumph and uncertainty. I didn't move. I just stared at the ashes, at what was supposed to be my future, my protection, my proof. The room was heavy with silence. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "You didn't win." His lip curled. "We'll see about that." Then he grabbed his keys and left. I stood there alone, the heat of the fire still radiating, but I felt cold, hollow. Like everything I'd held onto, every plan, every sense of justice, every ounce of hope had gone up in smoke. That was the night I hit rock bottom. The worst part wasn't losing the paper, or even him finding out. It was knowing that a part of me still hoped, deep down, that Robert would change. That maybe if I worked hard enough, or made him proud enough, he'd wake up. And see me. See the person I was trying so hard to be. But he didn't see me. He never had. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I barely slept. I went to work with bags under my eyes and a tight jaw. I stopped drawing. Every time I picked up a pencil, my hands would shake. My sketchbook stayed shut on my shelf like tombs. At home, things got worse. He started locking the fridge, said I was eating too much, mooching. He cut off the internet, claiming it was to save money, though I knew he just didn't want me emailing Eleanor or looking up lawyers. He even tried to convince David, my boss at the bookstore, to cut my hours, saying I was distracted and needed discipline. Thankfully, David saw right through him. He pulled me aside one day and said, "Whatever's going on at home, you've still got a job here." That meant more than he knew. I started spending more time at the store. David let me stay late. I'd sit in the back room during breaks, just breathing, surrounded by the quiet hum of old pages and the comforting weight of stories that weren't mine. It became my refuge. One night, shelving graphic novels, David handed me a small package. "This came for you?" "Here." He nodded. Dropped off by an older woman. Said not to open it until you're alone. I waited until I was in the break room, peeling the paper slowly. Inside was a thick folder, legal documents, property deeds, financial records, and a letter. "Caleb," it read. I knew he might do something like this. That's why the version he burned wasn't the only one. The original is in my lawyer's office. Copies are with my accountant and safe in a fireproof box at my house. But I wanted you to have this, too. Not for proof, but for peace of mind. You are not alone. You are not powerless. And this is just the beginning. Love always, Eleanor. I stared at the folder, then held the letter to my chest and cried. Not out of fear, not even sadness, but relief. Someone still believed in me. The next morning, I packed a duffel bag with clothes, my texts, my sketchbooks, and that letter. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked out while Robert was still asleep and biked to the nearest bus station. One transfer and 4 hours later, I was on Eleanor's porch. She opened the door like she'd been waiting all night, wrapping me in a hug that felt like home. "I was wondering how long it would take you," she said softly. I stayed with her the rest of the summer. At first, I felt guilty, like I was imposing, but she brushed it off every time. "Your family," she'd say. "And this is your home, too." With her encouragement, I started drawing again, slowly. Doodles in the margins of napkins, sketches of her garden, portraits of her dog. She hung the first one on the fridge like a museum piece. I found myself getting up earlier, cooking breakfast, mowing the lawn, fixing things around the house. Not because she asked, but because I wanted to contribute. I wanted to deserve everything she was giving me. She noticed. "You don't have to prove anything to me, Caleb," she said one afternoon, watching me scrub the porch steps. "Just be who you are." Those words stuck with me. By August, I had a new portfolio. My confidence was growing. I spent my days working part-time at a small local print shop Eleanor knew, and my evenings sketching, researching, planning for college. We made a tradition of sitting on the back porch every Friday night with tea, talking about life. She told me stories about her childhood, about raising Robert, about the kind of man she hoped I'd become. "Stronger than him," she said once. "Kinder, wiser, but not harder." I asked her what she meant. She looked out at the garden. "Don't let what he did harden you. Let it teach you, but don't carry the bitterness." Easier said than done, especially when the phone calls started. He called first in early September. I didn't answer. Then the texts came, "You ungrateful brat. She's manipulating you. You think this changes anything? You'll regret this." I didn't reply, but Eleanor saw the messages. She shook her head. "He's losing his grip. That's why he's lashing out." I thought she meant emotionally. I didn't know she also meant literally. Because that fall, she made another change to the will. Not just leaving the house and savings to me. She put me in charge of a trust fund my grandfather had left behind, one I hadn't even known existed. "Your grandfather wanted this to help the next generation," she said. "Robert squandered it. But you'll make something of it." It wasn't a huge fortune, but it was enough to cover tuition, supplies, a used car. Enough to build something real. And I did. By October, I was taking online courses through the Northwood Art School. I bought a second-hand laptop, set up a workspace in Eleanor's sunroom, and started freelancing, logos, illustrations, even commissions from comic book forums. My first $100 felt like gold. I didn't tell Robert any of this, but he found out. In November, just as the leaves were turning and Eleanor was making her famous pumpkin pie, we got a knock at the door. It was him. I hadn't seen him in person since I left. He looked different, thinner, more tired. Still tried to act in control, though. "Mom," he said stiffly. "Caleb. Can we talk?" She didn't invite him in. "I have nothing to say to you right now," she said calmly. He shifted his weight. "I made mistakes." "All right. I was angry, but I'm still your son. Doesn't that mean anything?" "You're right," she said. "You are my son, and I will always love you. But love doesn't mean enabling." He turned to me. "Caleb, just talk to me, please." I didn't move. I didn't speak. And that silence, it said everything. He left without another word. That night, I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, staring up at the stars. I thought about everything I'd lost, everything I'd gained. And for the first time in a long time, I felt proud. Not because I'd won, but because I hadn't given up, because I'd climbed out of the ashes and started building something new, something mine. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. But the part that changed everything, the twist he never saw coming, that was still waiting in the wings, because Eleanor wasn't finished either. And what she had planned next would finally turn the tables in a way no one, especially my dad, would ever forget. The air turned sharp in December, and with it, something shifted in the atmosphere between Eleanor and me. Not just the comfortable warmth we'd built, but something new, threaded beneath it, purpose. Quiet, steady, deliberate. Like we both knew something was coming, but neither of us was in a rush to say it out loud. Until one morning, over a pot of her peppermint tea, Eleanor set her mug down and said, "Caleb, I want you to meet someone." I looked up from my sketch pad. "Who?" "My attorney," she said simply. "We're going to clean house." I blinked. "You already changed the will. You said everything was in the trust." She nodded. "That was for protection. But now it's time for action." The words hung in the air like a lit match. She explained it all calmly, like a checklist. Documents she'd kept locked away for years, financial records, property titles, a paper trail showing just how much she'd covered for Robert, debts paid, cars fixed, a business loan never repaid. All of it documented, all of it signed. "Robert thinks he's entitled to everything I have," she said, her voice steady. "But entitlement is different from legacy. And I'm going to make sure he learns that before I go." I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt a flicker of guilt, not for her actions, but for being the reason. The other part felt something deeper. Permission. We met with her lawyer, Arthur Sterling, a sharp, well-dressed man in his 60s with silver glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor. He didn't talk down to me, he treated me like I was in the room on purpose, not as some passive heir. "This isn't about revenge," he said as we sat across from him in his office, snow ticking softly against the windows. "It's about setting boundaries. You're not cutting your father out. You're protecting yourself from the damage he's already done." Eleanor handed him a flash drive. "It's all there," she said. "Every loan, every promise, every broken agreement." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "And the trust documents?" She smiled faintly. "Already updated. Caleb is the sole successor trustee. If anything happens to me, he controls the assets." He nodded approvingly. "Smart." Then she turned to me. "But we're not done." Over the next several weeks, the setup unfolded like a carefully orchestrated play. Eleanor met with the bank, closed joint accounts she'd shared with Robert, rerouted all automatic payments through a new trust-managed fund. She removed his name from emergency contacts, changed security codes, even sold the pickup truck she'd lent him years ago, still technically in her name. And she told him none of it. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't cruel. It was surgical. By Christmas, we were playing a very quiet, very personal game of chess. And Robert didn't even realize he was already in check. But the real turning point came on New Year's Eve. We were setting up for our tradition: popcorn, old movies, thick socks, blankets. Eleanor handed me a thin manila envelope. "What's this?" "Open it," she said, eyes twinkling. Inside was a formal invitation, glossy cardstock, elegant calligraphy. "Eleanor Reynolds cordially invites you to the Legacy Celebration honoring Caleb Reynolds, scholarship recipient, artist, and successor trustee. Saturday, January 14th, 6 p.m. Prestige Lake Club." I read it twice before looking up. "A party?" "A fundraiser," she corrected. "But yes, also a celebration. You've earned it." I was stunned. "Why?" She laughed softly. "Because we're going public." I blinked. "Public?" She nodded, folding her hands. "Robert has always controlled the narrative. To his friends, to family, to the community. Always playing the victim, telling everyone your mother ruined him, that you're ungrateful, that I coddled you. But the truth matters, Caleb. And this night, it's not just a party, it's a reset." I swallowed. "Is he invited?" "Oh, yes," she said, her tone serene. In fact, he's one of the guests of honor. I almost choked. Are you serious? I am, she said. He won't be able to resist showing up. He'll think it's about him, that I'm softening. And that's exactly what we want. She had a point. Robert's ego was too big to turn down a stage, especially if he thought he'd be praised. But what he didn't know was that the stage would already be set, and the spotlight wouldn't be on him. The next 2 weeks were a blur of planning. Eleanor made calls. Brenda, the event coordinator, with her no-nonsense voice and military general organization skills, came by twice to walk us through catering, seating, lighting. We booked a string quartet, sent formal RSVPs, reserved the largest ballroom in the Prestige Lake Club, a venue Robert had once tried and failed to rent for a business seminar. I remembered how bitter he'd been, ranting about elitist gatekeepers. It was poetic. I spent hours designing the event program myself, using my artwork, incorporating subtle symbols, even embedding a hand-drawn dedication to Eleanor on the back cover. I printed them in the shop after hours, carefully trimming each one. It felt like building something sacred. Meanwhile, Eleanor gave me full access to the guest list. That's when I had an idea. Not revenge, not exactly, more like vindication. I reached out to people who mattered, old family friends, teachers, my band director, my mom's college roommate, who'd always kept in touch with Eleanor and once told me she believed my mom left not because she stopped loving me, but because she was afraid of him. They all RSVP'd yes. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mom. Her voice was hesitant. We hadn't spoken in almost 6 years. But the moment I told her what the event was about, and who it was really for, she said just 5 words, "Tell me where to be." Eleanor didn't even blink when I told her. "She deserves to see the boy you've become," she said. "And so do you." We didn't tell anyone she was coming, especially not Robert. The week of the event, things started to stir. Robert called Eleanor 4 times in 3 days. Each voicemail was different. The first, casual curiosity. The second, more pointed. The third, laced with suspicion. The last one, blunt, "If this is some kind of stunt, don't expect me to play along." She didn't return any of them. Let him squirm. Let him wonder. The day of the event, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the very same midnight blue tux that had once gone missing. Eleanor had pressed it herself, polished the shoes, even helped with my tie. "You clean up nice," she said, stepping back with a proud smile. I turned, the weight of everything behind us and everything ahead settling on my shoulders like the finest armor. "You ready?" I asked. She met my gaze in the mirror. More than ever. We drove together, arriving early, before the first guests trickled in. The ballroom glowed with soft gold light, tables dressed in white linens and garnet napkins. A slideshow played on loop, my childhood, my art, candid shots of me and Eleanor in her garden. People began to arrive. First in pairs, then small groups. Old neighbors, local business owners, teachers, family friends, my old history. Teacher, my art mentor. Even David, my boss from the bookstore, walked in with his wife and gave me a nod that made my throat tighten. And then he arrived. Robert Reynolds. Tall, confident, wearing a suit a size too small and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He walked in like he owned the place, scanning the room. He spotted me near the stage. His smile widened, performative and practiced. "Caleb," he said loudly, crossing the room. "You didn't tell me you were the star of the show." He hugged me without asking. His cologne hit like a punch. I stepped back. "It's Eleanor's event," I said evenly. "I'm just along for the ride." "Oh, come on," he said, gesturing to the banner behind the podium. "Your name's all over this thing. Must be nice, huh?" Before I could answer, Eleanor approached. "Robert," she said smoothly. "Glad you could make it." He leaned in for a kiss on her cheek. She gave him a polite nod and stepped aside. That's when he noticed the seating chart. His name wasn't next to mine. It wasn't even at our table. It was tucked in the far corner, next to a retired couple who barely knew us. His brow furrowed. "What's this about?" he asked. Eleanor didn't flinch. "You'll see." And he would. Because what was about to happen, what we'd spent months preparing, wasn't just a speech or a slideshow or a ceremony. It was a reckoning. And the moment his past walked through that door, wearing a pale blue dress and a calm expression, he finally realized the spotlight was no longer his. The moment my mom walked through the ballroom doors, the air changed. It wasn't loud or dramatic. No screeching halt to the music, no dropped glasses or gasps. Just a ripple, subtle but unmistakable, like someone had cracked open a window in a room that had been suffocating for years. She walked in slowly, head high, wearing that soft blue dress I remembered. Her hair had streaks of silver now, and she looked older, but stronger, too. Like someone who had fought hard battles and survived them all. Robert's eyes locked on her immediately. At first, he didn't move. Then, his mouth twitched, barely masking the panic that flickered behind his eyes. He stood there frozen, and I could see his hands curl into fists before he shoved them in his pockets. My mom didn't flinch. She crossed the room with grace, stopping only once to nod at Eleanor before coming to stand beside me. She gently touched my arm and gave me a small, proud smile. It wasn't much, but after 6 years of silence, it was everything. "Hey, Caleb," she said, her voice soft. I didn't respond with words. I just nodded and squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. Robert started walking toward us, slow, like he wasn't sure whether to charge or retreat. I could tell he hadn't expected this. He never thought she'd show her face again, not after the way he'd told everyone she'd abandoned us, that she was unstable, that she didn't care about me. He'd crafted that lie so carefully, built his whole reputation around it, and now she was here, alive, steady, smiling. He stopped a few feet from us. "What is this?" he muttered. "Why is she here?" Eleanor stepped in before I could respond. "Because she has every right to be." His eyes narrowed. "You invited her?" "I did," Eleanor said calmly. "And Caleb did, too." He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look away. I met his gaze and held it. Then he chuckled, bitter and shaky. "This is what this night is about, huh? A little stunt, a family ambush." "No," I said, stepping forward. "This night is about the truth, and everyone here deserves to hear it." He scoffed. "What truth? That your grandmother's brainwashed you? That your mother ran off and now wants a redemption arc? That you, Robert," Eleanor's voice cut through the noise like a blade. He froze. "You've spent years painting yourself as a victim," she said. "To friends, to family, to this community. And while you did that, Caleb was quietly surviving your bitterness, your manipulation, your control." "Don't," he warned. But she didn't stop. She turned toward the growing crowd, her voice rising just enough to be heard. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Some of you have known our family for decades. Some of you watched Caleb grow up. Many of you have heard versions of our story. Stories told by Robert Reynolds. Tonight, I'd like to share the version that matters." Robert's face reeled. "This is ridiculous." "No," I said, stepping forward beside her. "This is overdue." I pulled a remote from my pocket and clicked it. The slideshow behind us changed. Gone were the childhood pictures. Now came receipts, loan agreements, screenshots of texts, financial statements, dated emails, a carefully ordered slideshow documenting 15 years of Eleanor's silent support and my dad's silent sabotage. The guests watched in stunned silence. I spoke next, calmly, clearly. I wore a thrift store suit to my graduation because my dad sold the custom tux my grandmother bought for me. I didn't find out until the morning of the ceremony. He never apologized, just said it wouldn't have looked good on me anyway. I paused, let that sit. He also burned the first copy of Eleanor's will in our fireplace because he couldn't stand the idea that he wouldn't control everything she built. People started murmuring. A few turned to look at him. He shrank back, face twisted in disbelief. "You think this is revenge?" he snapped. "You're just a kid playing lawyer. None of this will hold up." "It already has," said a new voice. Arthur Sterling, Eleanor's lawyer, stood near the front table. He held up a leather-bound folder. "All documentation has been notarized. Multiple witnesses. Assets are already transferred to the trust. Robert Reynolds holds no financial or legal claim to Eleanor Reynolds' estate." Robert's mouth opened and closed like he couldn't breathe. Someone clapped. Then another. And then the whole room was applauding. Not for me, not for revenge, but for the end of a lie and the start of something honest. Later that night, after most guests had left and the string quartet packed up, Robert confronted us again in the parking lot. His voice was low and furious. "You think this is over? You think humiliating me fixes anything?" "No," I said, stepping between him and my mom. "This isn't about fixing you. This is about finally protecting us." He sneered. "You'll come crawling back one day. You'll need me." "I needed a father for 18 years, I said quietly. "You weren't there." He stared at me for a long time. Then got into his car and drove off without another word. We haven't seen him since. The weeks after the event were quiet, peaceful, like the house could finally exhale. I started my first semester at the Northwood Art School in January. Eleanor helped me move into student housing with a care package full of snacks and handwritten notes tucked between my sketchbooks. My mom and I started talking more, slowly, carefully. I wasn't ready to forgive everything. Not yet. But I was ready to try, and so was she. One night, a few weeks into the semester, she called me out of the blue. "I was proud of you," she said that night, "for standing up to him, for telling the truth." I didn't know what to say, so I just said, "Thanks." And that was enough. As for Eleanor, she's still gardening, still making tea, still telling me I need to wear socks indoors or I'll catch a cold in the bones. She's not just my guardian anymore. She's my anchor, my mentor, my hero. And now, thanks to her, thanks to all of it, I finally know who I am. Not a victim, not a shadow, but a name worth carrying forward. Caleb Reynolds, artist, student, grandson, survivor, and the man who broke the cycle. What would you have done if you were in my shoes?